Hi there, my name's Donghua. Okay, so recently there seems to have been more people who think it's okay to like FF at 20, to say open mid, to say GG, let's just surrender at like 5, 6, or like 10 minutes. They feel compelled that because they've lost a few early kills, they think that the game is just automatically over and they shouldn't even try to mount a comeback and just let them win and move on to the next game. The whole we've lost lane so we've lost the game mentality is so bullshit. Even if you've lost 10 kills in the early game, you can still mount a comeback. Is it difficult to come back? Yes, of course, but those are the ones that are worth winning. One of the most important things in playing League of Legends is learning how to play from behind. And how do you learn how to play from behind? Well, there's a lot of ways to learn how to play from behind actually, but the best way is probably to play from behind. You can read up on it, you can watch videos about it, you can watch streams about it. Doesn't matter, if you don't have the patience to do it, you'll never be good at it. On the other hand, people who never surrender and refuse to surrender no matter what are just as bad. I think too many people are just way too misinformed about this game. A lot of people say, if we just believe in ourselves, if we just work together, if we believe in the power of friendship and teamwork, we can overcome the odds. As long as we believe in each other, reality will no longer apply to us. Teamwork is essential for comebacks, but sometimes even perfect teamwork just won't cut it. You know who never surrendered? Who's just too prideful or too honorful to surrender? Who went against the advice of all his friends and advisors? Hitler. The reason Hitler killed himself is because he didn't have the fucking balls to surrender. He just kept making his people fight a meaningless war that was already lost, and he just wouldn't fucking accept it. He didn't hit yes on the surrender vote, even though his vote was the only vote that really fucking mattered. He just kept telling himself, if we just believe in the power of friendship and Nazism, we will prevail. Heil friendship! He just kept making people suffer on because he couldn't realize the reality of the goddamn situation. Surrendering is not something to do early on without even trying to mount a comeback. But it's also not something to never consider because what you're basically doing is you're making people suffer through a losing battle. You want to know when you should surrender? Well, I'm going to make it easy for you. Here are 3 questions that you always ask yourself before surrendering, and if you can say yes to all 3 of them, then you should definitely surrender. First question, is our team composition shit compared to the enemies? Now, you can totally win a game with shitty team comps. People do it all the time in solo queue. Most people pick comfort champions over counter champions, which is completely fine, and it's actually what you should be doing. If you don't win or get a huge lead in the early or mid game, then once late game rolls around, it becomes really hard to win. Here are some really shitty scaling team comps. All attack damage, all ability power, triple AD carry comps, no CC comps, no tank comps. You want to know why Hitler lost the war? It's because he ran out of tanks. He had no tanks left, he had no frontline left. All he had were soldiers, and soldiers can't frontline because they're too squishy and they blow up too fast. If you have a late game scaling team comp, you need to stall the game out as long as possible if you're losing the early game. By around 50-60 minutes, most people will be close to max items. And at that point, it's just how well you play team fights, and it no longer matters how much gold each team has. Look at the progression of the war. Hitler did really well during the start of the war. He was kicking ass and taking names and taking Europe. But he just couldn't finish the job. He just couldn't make that last push into the Nexus. Europe stalled Hitler out because they were waiting for help from North America, and everyone knows that North America's only strategy is to do nothing early game and win in the late game. Hitler just couldn't end the game fast enough, and so he got outscaled. Second question to ask yourself, do we have 0 objective control? Kills mean almost nothing compared to objectives. A single tower is worth 3 kills. Even if you're down 10 kills, that's only about 3,000 gold that you're down. As long as you stay relatively even in towers and other global objectives, you won't fall too far behind. The reason that towers are so valuable is that they're basically zones where your team is safe. You know it's safe around the tower because you have true vision around the tower. You know there aren't 5 people sitting sitting there waiting for you because you can see it with the tower. The less towers you have, the less safe zones you have on the map. There are also certain objectives that once they fall or are taken by the enemy, the game is pretty much over. Some examples of these objectives would be triple inhibs. Once you lose 2 inhibs, the game gets really hard because you're basically boxed into your own base. But once you lose 3 inhibs, you'll barely be able to deal with the super minions, let alone the enemy champions. Once 3 inhibs go down, 12 super minions spawn per minute. 5th Dragon and Baron buff together. 5th Dragon comebacks do happen, and they do happen more often than you would think. Oftentimes a team gets a little too cocky with their Dragon buff, and they overextend and they just all die. But Baron and 5th Dragon together, not only does that mean you just lost 2 buffs that stack on top of each other. Baron buff gives you a bonus AD and AP, while Dragon buff multiplies that by a percentage. You just lost 2 game-changing objectives without even contesting either. That means you were boxed into your base and you couldn't even leave for a second. You want to know why Hitler lost the war? It's because he had no fucking map pressure. The Russians were winning in the north, the Americans were winning in the south, he lost top and bottom lane, minions were pouring in from all different directions, he had no control over objectives, he had no vision around Germany, he was losing towers right and left, and he couldn't even leave his own fucking base. Last question to ask yourself before you surrender. You want to know why Hitler lost the war? I bet you want to know. Well, you're about to know why Hitler lost the fucking war. Hitler was a distrusting cunt. You might not know this, but Hitler had brilliant generals. He had brilliant advisors, masters of war that basically took over Europe for him. Hitler oftentimes would make orders that directly contradicted his generals' advice. He kept thinking that the generals didn't know what they were doing or that they just wanted personal power. Had Hitler just listened and gone with the advice that his generals gave him, he could have had a really good shot at winning the war. So the reason that Hitler lost the war is because of Hitler. He distrusted his teammates to do the right thing. And when you distrust your teammates, teamwork is no longer possible. And when teamwork is no longer possible, comebacks are also no longer possible. So, in conclusion, the 3 questions you ask yourself before surrendering are, is our team comp shit compared to theirs? Do we have 0 objective control? And do our teammates no longer trust each other? If you can answer yes to all 3 of these, that's when you surrender.